Great to be here. I'm delighted to be here. And that's a really tough act to follow. A young 14-year-old, an eloquent 14-year-old who's done so many exciting things with her life. But I'd like to share with you what I am doing at the Museum of Art and Photography, or MAP. It's a new museum that's just opened up in the city. I'm really looking to take art into the heart of the community and change the way people experience museums. Because let's be honest, what do we think of museums in India? They're boring, fusty, dusty places where no one wants to be. And we really want to change that. We want people to understand that a museum is not just a place where objects hang on walls. Art is in the drape of your sari. Art is in the rangoli that we draw outside our homes on our thresholds. Art is in the way we decorate our shrines at home. So art is a way of life in India, and unfortunately that connection seems to have snapped somewhere with increasing urbanization. So how do we change that? We want MAP to be a kind of cultural hub, a space for ideas and conversations that we initiate through our collection. So usually, most museums establish first a physical space, and then they develop their digital initiatives. But at MAP, we had to turn things on its head, because when the pandemic hit, we were forced to actually take that step, which was not a voluntary step. And in the confusion in the first few months when we realized this was not going to go away, in the conversations with our board of directors and our advisors, the message that we were constantly getting is, why are you so focused on a physical space? Why don't you launch a digital museum and get online? Because that's where the conversation is. And so that's really what we did. We launched our digital museum in 2020, and then we realized how it opened up the whole world to us. For example, in a physical space, we have the people of Bangalore who will visit us, and then, of course, all the visitors who come into the city. But here, the world was our oyster. And you were actually taking the collection to people in the UK, in Australia, in Delhi, in Bombay. It was just a wonderful way of interacting with people. With our previous speaker, the wonderful pilot, I thought let's first focus on the two pillars of MAP, which is really inclusion and accessibility. Because we really think those are very important to so many people who visit us, and we want everyone to feel welcome at MAP. So from the very earliest stages, we sat down with our architects and our consultants, which was DIOC, the Diversity and Equal Opportunities Center, to see that the museum was welcoming not only to people with physical disability, so we had, of course, the ramps, the kind of gradients that we used, but also people with mental disability. For example, what are the kind of surfaces we use in our elevators? They need to be matte finished. Or we have the kind of lights that we use. We have a quiet room for someone who's disturbed and needs to calm down and then come back into the space. Even on our website, the kind of colors that we use, color contrast, the fonts, the alt text. All our online programming had ISL or Indian Sign Language interpretation. So the idea was that let the space be a space for everyone. And the collections of MAP, which are so diverse, really helped us to be inclusive, because most museums have a classical art, modern and contemporary, textiles, but in addition to those three, we also have photography, indigenous art, and popular culture, which you don't find usually in museums here. And what we felt we could do was we could collapse these hierarchies between what is perceived as high and low art, and draw connections across the collection. We are one of the few, if not the only, museums that has popular culture as part of its collection. And if you need to understand that, popular culture would be Bollywood posters, lobby cards, trade labels, advertisements. And when a person enters a museum, he feels that, yes, there's some part of my life reflected in this space, and then he's able to connect. And that's really the hook with which you draw people in. So when we went online, or before we went online, we'd already been engaging with the city through this whole series of workshops where children from different schools, age groups, backgrounds were all coming into the space that we had created for education. But once the pandemic hit, then we just had to quickly think again. And so we had Discover Map packs, which children and families could download from the comfort of their homes. So you had these do-it-yourself kits which explore the collection, which you could have fun with. And then the team said, why don't we just take learning online? So we developed a whole video series called Art Sparks, and it's an ongoing series, and each season has 8 episodes. And the interesting part about it is that it creates content in collaboration with children, so that you're not telling children what they should learn or what they should know, but you're also trying to understand what they want to know about, and then create this content together with them. Okay, so with our exhibitions at MAP as well, the idea was not just to recreate the whole physical experience of walking through a museum, but instead, so most people would create these, you go online and then you'd be walking through these various rooms of paintings hanging on walls. But we said, let's look at the advantages and tools of the virtual world. So there's audio, there's video. Why don't we use these actually to create an exciting new experience? And I'll just tell you about one of the exhibitions that we did, which was called Sights and Sounds. Because usually when you approach a work of visual art, you look at it. So we said, why don't we challenge people? Why don't we ask them, instead of looking at a painting, to listen to a painting, use different senses? And so we collaborated with an institution called Brand Music, and they helped us to create a sonic interpretation of an artwork. And so we chose these 6 artworks from across the different sections of MAP, and you actually listened to a painting, and that was a lot of fun. An interesting part of what we do is the MAP Academy, which is a whole wing under MAP. And the reason we actually developed this was because when we discovered there was simply no encyclopedia of Indian art. We have this huge cultural tradition. We talk about the huge art heritage that we have, this system that's developed over centuries, but hardly any records of it. And so we decided to have an encyclopedia, but an online encyclopedia that would be free and accessible to everybody. So we've begun with about 2,000 entries, and we are gradually developing that. We also have online courses, short-term, long-term courses. We've begun with textiles. We're dealing with modern and contemporary art. But the idea is to make this all available and make it fun as well. Easy, simple, interesting language. And finally, tools and resources is the third part of the MAP Academy, because there's so much of information available. And the problem also is that nobody knows where to find it. So if, for example, I'm researching kalamkaris, so we decided, why don't we pull together all the existing information that is there, and so create the portal where you go online and you're able to access all the existing information on a subject. And so that's the third part of what we do at MAP Academy. Okay. Good, so go online and then look at the MAP Academy. You'll really have a lot of fun. And when we launched digitally in 2020, we launched with our festival, Art is Life. And we had the second iteration of that the next year, which was Art is Life Sound Frames. And that really looked at the intersection of music and the visual arts. And we looked at using the power of music to reach out to much wider audiences, because music actually appeals to everyone, whether you're 8 or you're 80. So we try to look more holistically at the arts, because that's how it is in India. Because if you look at the way at performance in India, or you look, for example, at the Patwa painters, they're painters, but they're also singers and they're dancers, because they go from village to village telling people about the stories that they've done, and they sing and they dance. So in India, you were not just a singer or a dancer or a performer. You were all these things integrated into one. And so we want to bring that aspect into the understanding of the arts as well. Collaboration is at the heart of what we do at MAP. And Museums Without Borders was really this program where we collaborated with over 50 museums across the world. And part of it is still happening. So it actually was born out of the idea when objects and people could not travel. We said, why don't we make that happen virtually? And so we took an object from MAP, and we juxtaposed it with an object from a partner museum. And when you bring two objects in dialogue, you get some very interesting conversations. And these would be articulated by the curators from either side. So it was a wonderful way of actually coming together, sharing ideas, sharing knowledge, sharing skills, that would make the experience so much more exciting for your viewer. Well, we are living in the IT capital of the country. And we thought, why don't we reach out to this whole sector and collaborate with them as well? And so the idea or the concept of Map Labs was born, which looked at this whole intersection of science and the arts and said, why don't we use technology to find art solutions? And so our first collaboration was with Accenture, and we asked them to help us develop a 3D persona of M.F. Hussain, one of our most iconic artists. And so using artificial intelligence, you actually had this holographic persona whom you could chat with, whom you could ask questions, and it was great, especially for young kids who he'd obviously passed away, and lots of our younger generation don't know him. So you can walk into the museum and you can chat with Hussain and find out more. And let me end with Interwoven, which was another collaboration we did with Microsoft on their project AI for Good. So this really drew on the huge textile collection of MAP, and we thought, let's link in with collections from across the world. So we partnered with different museums once again, and the collaboration is based on, say, using different motifs, patterns, designs. So for example, if you went online and you typed in paisley, then it would suddenly start picking up all sorts of paisleys in different collections, and you kind of see the way the whole design or the motive has evolved as it goes, and then you realize how much we are connected. So the idea was to connect cultures across geographies, across borders, across time periods, and that's really what we're hoping to do at MAP. To promote cultural exchange, to find our commonalities, accept our differences, so that we develop empathy and we discover our humanity. So that's where I'd like to end, but our museum is opened now, so I invite you all to come in and look at all the tech experiences, because we've established first as a digital museum, and you can see that very much in the spaces where you'll have a lot of fun with a lot of holographic experiences and tech. So thank you very much for listening, and hope to see you soon.